Yiheng Wang just got the 2x2 world record average with a time of 0.78 seconds. That's insane, a 15% drop from the previous record, making this record almost impossible to beat. But there's a lot of controversy surrounding this record, and people are saying that this record should be disqualified. Yiheng is no stranger to controversy. Last year, his first ever 3x3 world record was disqualified because of a missed scramble. But shortly after, he proved himself by getting the 3x3 world record again and again. This year, however, he's been putting more focus on 2x2. Which brings us to his first controversy this year, at a competition in Malaysia. He starts an average of 3 incredible solves, 0.94, 0.87, and 0.98. 3 solves well under the world record average of 1.01 by Zain Kanani. All he needs is a 1.12 solve to get the world record. In his 4th solve, he seems pretty nervous and gets a 1.9. But on his last solve, he smashes the world record with a 0.79, getting an amazing 0.93 world record average in the first ever sub 1. But immediately, the scorecard was suspicious. The 5th solve was actually a 1.39, and you can see the judge's signature as well. But that's all crossed out. Instead, a faster time is written in the E1 box. The reason why is because during the 5th solve, after getting a 1.39, Yiheng complained about the cover being raised when he was not ready. The 0.79 was on an extra scramble, but after a lot of deliberation, the WCA reverted the last solve to a 1.39, which disqualified the world record, since you can't ask for an extra after you finish the solve. A couple of weeks later, Zain went on to get the first ever sub 1 average with a 0.92. But just the day after that, Yiheng got another 0.93 average, this time without any issues. He once again proved himself after disqualification, but it was just hours too late. With Zain's record, 0.93 was not the record anymore. But the crazy thing about this whole situation is when rumors started coming out that Yiheng's original average might be reinstated. The post that disqualified his average was then removed, and suddenly, his original record that used an extra was back, making him once again the first ever to get a sub 1 average. Since they discovered he complained about the incident right when it happened, the extra counted, and the original 0.93 world record was given back to him. But Yiheng was not happy with just getting that record back. It was time to prove himself again, in a big way. So let's take a look at these solves in his recent world record average. On the first scramble, there's 2 lines that are pretty noticeable, and he chooses the yellow one. He first solves this corner in the back with UR, and then solves this corner with a R U to R prime, which gives this really nice EG1 case. But these last 3 moves actually cancel into the case, so instead of doing R U to R prime, he just does R U prime R prime, and then continues the algorithm. And that was 19 turns per second. This next scramble, there's no lines or bars, but there's a pretty nice layer on yellow. These 2 corners are in the right spot, so if you insert both corners one at a time, it'll solve the layer. Yiheng is going to solve this one first, in the back, and then solve this one, which results in a pretty easy anti-soon CLL. And all these moves cancel, so we can solve this corner at the same time, and then cancel into that back soon. There seemed to be a brief lockup in this solve, which resulted in this solve being a bit lower in TPS with around 13. Once again, a lot of lines on this scramble, but Yiheng chooses to do white. The solution is pretty simple for the side, U2, RUR to solve this. And this is a pretty spammable EG1 case. So that was 16.5 turns per second. This scramble, there's 2 obvious sides. There's red, but Yiheng chooses to go with green. To solve the green side, just RU R prime, and you get this also pretty nice spammable EG1 case. And that was 19 turns per second. This last scramble is pretty interesting. There's a completed red side, so it's pretty obvious to just do EG1 from here, but the algo is not that great. Yiheng seems to prefer algorithms that are very easy to spam moves on. And that's actually possible with white here. It's a very hard side to see, but B, U prime R prime, solves the white side, and gets this EG1 case, which is really spammable. Just the most basic case, take out one corner, put it in, put the other one in, and you're solved. And that was 15 TPS. Afterwards, the scrambles were confirmed to be right. There were no issues with extras, so there should be no controversy, right? Well, no. These solves were ridiculously fast. up to almost 20 TPS on some of these solves, and when it's sub 1, including a timer start and stop, some people were suspicious, so they slowed the solves down. And there's another issue. Timer starts. Images started coming out showing the timer starts that Yiheng did. These look pretty bad. The regulations state that the hands should be face down and fingers should be on the timer, and obviously not touching the cube. It's fair to say that these pictures don't look too legal. To check, we can go frame by frame. So just as an example, I'll be looking at Yiheng Wang's first solve of the average, which ends up being a 0.74. So what we can do is first look at the timer stop, and try to find that exact frame where he stopped the timer. Let's say it was right here. So the final time was a 0.74. If you convert this number into frames, for a 60 frame per second video, we get around 44.5 frames. So from this position, we have to move back 44 times and see what position he started at. And this is that position. Now you can see why the timer start is a bit questionable. If this video is right, he hasn't started the timer at all yet. Maybe because he's briefly touching the timer around here. And the cube is pretty much completely lifted off the table. Even if you give him 1 or 2 more frames of leeway, this is still not very legal. You're gonna have to jump back quite a few frames until the timer start looks alright. Now, what time should this solve actually have been? Let's say it starts on this frame. In the next frame, his hands are starting to lift off the timer. So if we can go ahead and count the number of frames it takes for him to solve this cube and put his hands back on the timer. From that position to this position, I counted around 52 frames. Converting that to seconds, we would have gotten a 0.86 or 0.87. Still a really fast solve, but that's a 0.13 difference. Might not seem like a lot, but that's pretty much the time drop that happened from Zane's former world record to this world record. So this has to be enough evidence to disqualify this record because of the timer starts, right? Well, there is precedent for this. In 2019, Ekaterina got a 2x2 Russian record single with a 0.6. But slowing the video down, it's also clear that there's an illegal timer stop. This was a stopping position, which was clearly not legal with hands facing down. The WCA ruled this a +2. However, 5 days later, they decided to remove the +2 and reinstate the record. Their reasoning was pretty simple. The timer stop looks clean without slow motion, and the cuber shouldn't be penalized from frame by frame analysis of the video afterwards. This started the precedent that if it looks good without slow motion, it should be fine. So with this precedent, Yiheng's record is likely to also stand. And even if it doesn't, he got a 0.92 average the round right after. This brings up more questions than answers. Is the WCA really going to let this be legal? And if they do, would these so-called sliding timer starts be abused? There's a lot of solutions being proposed, like using 4-pad mode and even removing the event. But one thing is for sure. This event has gotten too fast. Faster than any of us could have possibly imagined. Thanks for watching.